Hey everybody, I'm Aaron Maté sitting in for Jimmy Dore here with Americans comedian Kurt Metzger. And remember this headline in Politico that appeared right before the 2020 election? Hunter Biden's story is Russian disinformation, dozens of former intelligence officials say. So you remember that? There was this letter signed by a bunch of former intelligence officials like John Brennan, the ex-head of the CIA, James Clapper, ex-head of the National Intelligence Office, Michael Morrell, former deputy director of the CIA, all claiming that the Hunter Biden laptop story, which appeared in the New York Post just before the 2020 election, has all the earmarks of a Russian influence operation. And this led to headlines like this, declaring that the Hunter Biden laptop is simply Russian disinformation. It was on that basis that Twitter and Facebook censored the story, and U.S. media ignored it because some former intelligence officials told us that it all came from Russia. Well, we've since learned that that was all a scam, and that's been borne out in all the reporting that's come out since. This was a real laptop, nothing to do with Russia. Hunter Biden dropped it off at a computer repair shop, forgot about it because he was dealing with some personal problems. And the contents of that laptop showed that Hunter Biden was trading off of his family name for business contracts. And it raised questions about what Joe Biden himself knew about it. But the damage was done because back when this should have been really discussed before the election in 2020, it was censored because a bunch of former intelligence officials lied to the public and said with no evidence that all this could be the work of Russia. So now there are efforts at accountability. So Jim Jordan, who's the new chair of the House Judiciary Committee, he has sent letters to 12 ex-intelligence officials who called the Hunter Biden laptop disinformation, including former CIA Director John Brennan and former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper. So he wants them to come before Congress and answer for what they did, which was falsely paint this Hunter Biden laptop story as the work of Russia. So guess what's happening now? Now the same people who declared that this was all a Russian operation are now throwing each other under the bus. And they're basically blaming the media for twisting their words. Oh, we didn't mean to say it was from Russia. So check out this headline in the Washington Post. The Hunter Biden laptop and claims of Russian disinformation. The letter signed by more than 50 former intelligence officials about the laptop was carefully worded to say much less than is often claimed. So, we didn't mean to say that this was from Russia. That was just the media twisting our words.
Did the Washington Post just now read the letter and discover this?
So check this out. So one of the people they interviewed was James Clapper, former director of the Office of National Intelligence. And he says this: there was message distortion. Politico deliberately distorted what we said. Okay, so James Clapper is accusing Politico now, 2 years later, of distorting what he said. Why wasn't he saying, if that's true, if he really thought he was distorted, why wasn't he saying that back then?
Oh, because he was dropped, because first of all, he knew they would do that. So that's why he gave them the materials to do that, because he wanted them to do that.
Exactly. And the Washington Post goes on to quote the letter. So this is from the original letter, and it said the laptop, quote, has all the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation. That's what the letter said. But when outlets like Politico took that story,
they said disinfo.
They said disinfo. That's the headline. And James Clapper saw that headline like everybody else. He didn't come out and correct them.
I've been asking this of people when they say disinfo. I'm like, does disinfo mean, we've talked about it on here, does that mean information that they don't want you to hear and it's an enemy tells you? I didn't know that they didn't put disinformation. They just put information.
Information, yes. And the point was they put that there knowing that outlets like Politico and reporters like Natasha Bertrand, who was the reporter on that story, have no evidentiary standards whatsoever, and they will twist it to fit their narrative. But also, regardless whether they called it an information operation or not, the point is they're still saying it came from Russia, which is false. This came from Hunter Biden's actual laptop.
What are the earmarks exactly?
Exactly.
Russian information. Hunter Biden's dick is in it.
The earmarks are that this exposed Democratic Party corruption. And so accordingly, just like in 2016, when we had to accept on faith the claim that the Democratic Party emails released by WikiLeaks came from Russia because they exposed Democratic Party corruption, including Hillary Clinton and her allies in the party conspiring against Bernie Sanders. Because it inconveniences them and their privilege, we have to just believe it all came from Russia.
I like how much like the devil this guy is, where he's like, well, that wasn't my exact words in our contract.
But look how the Washington Post tries to spin Clapper's attempt to save face now. So this is what the Washington Post, this is Glenn Klessner of the Washington Post. What's his name? Glenn Klessner, I think. And he says this. Analysis. This is a Washington Post guy now. Analysis. Note that the letter refers to a Russian information operation, not disinformation. Within the national security community, there's a difference.
Well, yes, we know within the regular media there is no difference between information and disinformation. We were aware of that. I didn't know that. I wasn't aware the national security community, the community recognizes that difference.
But there's two things there. What he's not pointing out is that all these headlines were generated saying that this is Russian disinformation. And regardless, whether you use information or disinformation, you're still saying it came from Russia. That's the point.
This is on purpose. Like, This is like believe all women was never that. It was believe women, but that's equally nonsensical and designed to make you go, oh, all women. That's a purpose. That's on purpose. Why am I saying it like you don't believe it?
So going back to James Clapper, okay, he is the former head of the Office of National Intelligence. He's the director, okay? And now he's claiming that when he signed this letter, that there was message distortion, and Politico deliberately distorted what we said, okay? Well, check out what James Clapper said at the time. And does it sound to you like James Clapper is saying that this is not Russian disinformation? Because check out what CNN did. CNN hired James Clapper after he left office when Trump took over. And CNN trumpeted a clip from James Clapper on Twitter where they talk about how the Hunter Biden emails are, quote, tied to a Russian disinformation effort targeting Biden. That's how CNN, James Clapper's employer, described his words. And James Clapper didn't call them out back then. And listen to what he did.
Look at his face right there. He's made like,
Listen to what he said at the time. This is from the fall of 2020, right when all this is happening.
Obama. So, Director, a bunch of questions from this. Let me just start with this. How much does the source matter, right? So you hear the story of this laptop. We don't know a lot. We do know that the way that this information is getting out is through Steve Bannon and Rudy Giuliani. How much does the source matter here?
Well, source matters a lot, and the timing matters a lot, I think. And to me, this is just classic textbook Soviet-Russian tradecraft at work.
The Soviets are involved. I missed that part of it. And it's their tradecraft? What is tradecraft? Is that like Minecraft?
They're promoting communism through Hunter Biden's dick pics, I guess.
Yeah, well, did you see how he equally weighed out his crack on a scale to make sure there was not...
Oh, man.
Russians have analyzed the target. They understand that the president and his enablers crave dirt on Vice President Biden, whether it's real or contrived. It doesn't matter to them.
Contrived. Notice how he says there, this could be contrived. So yes.
It doesn't matter to them whether it's real. That sounds a lot like the dirt they had on Trump, that it didn't matter.
And he's projecting, of course. It doesn't matter to him whether what he knows what he's saying is false or not. He's still going to say it because this is classic Russiagate tradecraft at work.
And so all of a sudden, two and a half weeks before the election, this laptop appears somehow without emails on it without any metadata.
But that's a complete fabrication. So he's lying right there. That's not even true. There was metadata on these emails. He just made that up.
It's all very curious. But so here you have a willing target, and the Russians, who are very sophisticated about how to exploit a willing target. And to me, that's what's at work here.
And so, when you try to figure out the specifics of, whether that meeting email, for example, is real in the midst of this, do you think stuff like that could just have been planted in there and be completely fake?
I do.
So now he's claiming that he never said that this could be disinformation. Right there, he said that, yeah, I do think this could be fake. So now he's lying about his initial position, just like he was lying back then about what he knew about these emails and in suggesting that they came from Russia.
Well, it reminds me of the glory of the American experiment. Remember Mike Pompeo? I learned to lie.
We lied, we cheated, we stole. Yeah, that's James Clapper too.
I think the emails could be contrived, particularly.
There he is. He's spreading the claim right there that these emails could be contrived, aka he's saying that this could be Russian disinformation.
You want to know what else is suspicious? He looks like that old man from Up, and we just had that balloon thing.
As I understand it from what I've read, they appear without any metadata. That is, from, to, and any technical data.
False. They had metadata. He's just lying.
What the hell is metadata?
That's the information and contained in an email, like the digital information that lets you know when it was sent and from who and all that. It's like the signature.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's kind of a big lie. So who the Russians get to? That blind guy with the crazy hat?
Yes, that's what basically James Clapper is alleging. All this is a Russian operation.
At least immediately evident. Now, if this computer is in the hands of the FBI, they have obviously excellent, sophisticated technical and forensic analytic capabilities, and I think they'll be able to sort it out, whether this is genuine or not. But it's all pretty curious, given, again, 2.5 weeks out from the election.
Yeah, imagine that. Before an election, there's something called an October surprise, which is when damaging information comes out about a presidential candidate, except in this case, to address that, people just censor it and then lie about it and claim that it comes from Russia.
It doesn't most elections. Actually, there's nothing curious at all.
It happens all the time. Yeah. And the way they respond to it is just by lying and claiming it comes from Russia. And then when that's not enough, censoring it so that people can't even read about it. So this is a brazen liar. This is a former director of national intelligence, straight up lying back then. And now that he's receiving letters from Congress asking him to explain his behavior back then, now he's lying again. He's claiming that the media distorted him. Notice how he didn't call them out back when this was happening if he really felt as if his message was being distorted.
We'll sort it out eventually.
So here's what else we learned from the Washington Post. This is interesting. The Washington Post learned that the letter was organized by Mike Morrell, former deputy director of the CIA. Morrell had long been considered a top candidate for CIA director in a Biden administration. So the guy who's up for a job as director of the CIA under Biden happens to organize a letter claiming that this embarrassing story about Joe Biden and his son all comes from Russia. What are the odds?
Whenever an agent of the government wants to get their next job, that's when remember that Larry Nassar, the coach that molested the Olympic team?
Yeah.
That the FBI, those two agents are retiring and we're going to get a job working with the Olympics. So they just didn't do anything about it.
Yeah. Another example, remember that whole scam that about Trump communicating via a server with a Russian bank, the Alpha Bank, that whole thing, which was generated by people working for the Clinton campaign. That was concocted and pushed by a guy named Rodney Jaffe in the summer of 2016. And he thought he was up for a major cybersecurity position under Hillary Clinton if she won. So he was incentivized to push that scam there because he thought after Hillary won, he'd get a big job.
How much is this like an enterprising scumbag con artist knows what to tell people that they want to hear? And those people are like, well, I like the sound of it. Don't care how you do it.
All these people are just scam artists. That's all it is. It's all a racket. It's all a racket. Here's Glenn Greenwald. It's amazing what's going on here. Because of the House hearing investigating this, the political and media establishment can't ignore what they did any longer. So now they're turning on each other, blaming one another for the disinformation campaign.
Well, Ensai Hirsch.
And I say, I put out a little pun, rats on a sinking censorship.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
You just bought the establishment 6 more months with that bad point.
And Glenn says, good point. If James Clapper, knew Politico, and Natasha Bertrand were lying about what their letter said, why didn't he say so to them? Reality. The CIA intelligence people lying wanted the media to spread this. Only now that someone has to take the hit is Clapper saying Politico lied.
Whoa, welcome to the world of Judith Butler.
Judy Miller.
Oh, Judy Miller. Who's Judith Butler?
She's an author. Famous author, right?
That's some Judith Miller.
Judith Miller, yeah. Judy Miller is the Iraq WMD.
Welcome
reporter.
to both of them.
Hey, why not? They're all welcome. And let's just remember back how this was spread back in the fall of 2020. Of course, the biggest purveyor of this, or one of the biggest purveyors, was none other than Adam Schiff, the biggest Russiagate liar in Congress. And this is what he said back then about the Hunter Biden laptop.
Of the House Intelligence Committee, Congressman Adam Schiff. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. Does it surprise you at all that this information Rudy Giuliani is peddling very well could be connected to some sort of Russian government disinformation campaign?
Well, we know that this whole smear on Joe Biden comes from the Kremlin. That's been clear for well over a year now that they've been pushing this false narrative.
This is like watching the evolution of what's the stuff that Rogan said he took and that eventually went from horse paste or to horse goo.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
even the texture of it degraded or as they retold the story.
Yeah. Yeah. So Adam Schiff, when he was the chair of the House Intelligence Committee, he was using his position to make claims like this, that the Hunter Biden laptop was the work of Russia, that he had seen secret evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. He just couldn't tell us because it was classified. And now that Adam Schiff is no longer on the House Intelligence Committee, he was recently kicked off for lying so many times. And now the Republicans have taken over. Now they're trying to hold to account some of the people who pushed this lie. And look how all of them now are throwing each other under the bus and lying about what they initially said.
Doing live stand-up comedy in Tempe, Palm Springs, Milwaukee, Nashville, Northampton, Massachusetts, Syracuse, Cohoes, New York, and Hartford, Connecticut. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets and become a premium member. Get access to all our content.